Welcome to Glorious Botafogo, your number one source of Botafogo news in English. Welcome back to the GB podcast. A little bit of a surprise episode because, truth be told, I wasn't even planning to do an episode this week. Pedro unavailable, and I just thought, fuck it, what else can I speak about? After the usual two-game format we do, having lost to Fluminense followed by Flamengo on the weekend, I thought, fuck this. We've got nothing to talk about. The club's in the shambles. It's just, we're down in the dumps. It's just depressing. But after last night's game in the Copa Libertadores against Nacional Potosi, the red button's now been hit. We need to have a serious conversation about this club. So a bit of a surprise episode for you. I wasn't planning to do this, but it will actually follow the usual weekly schedule as planned, because this is getting bad. This is really, really getting bad. On the brink of being knocked out the Libertadores. As much as people can be confident that we'll take them back home to the Nilton Santos, and we'll just beat them 2-0 convincingly. Are you sure the way we're playing at the moment? It's we've got a lot to talk about, and for once, it might be a bit of a short pod, obviously due to the notice. I've just banned my laptop out. I've got some natural lighting for today, since it's the next afternoon. And I thought conversations need to be had. But there's going to be more focus on the footballing aspect side of things, because since the firing of Dairo, John Tex has been dead silent. The board's been dead silent. Barbosa with some interesting comments. Anselmi firing blind shots at the hierarchy. It is very worrying. The first match week, leading up to the season, how well some of our young players performed in Copinha, as well as the early signs we saw in the Carioca. I know, against Madureira and those Bangu, those lower down Carioca teams, so be it. But then we opened up the season with a very convincing win against Cruzeiro. All looked fine. Now the club from top to bottom is an absolute shambles in terms of performance, organisation, direction to go. It's just not a nice place to be in. It's not a nice time to be a Botafogo supporter at the moment. And we may as well kickstart off with what happened. I was going to start off with the Libertadores game last night. Let's just quickly brush through the shit that's gone down. Last week, Brasileiro, 1-0 defeat to Fluminense, and that was the first real worrying sign. Even though we had lost to Grêmio, in that game we've shown signs, just too much defensive frailties. Even in the game against Vasco, we put our second team out and we still went toe to toe. It was still it was a midfield battle. The game against Fluminense was the first game starting off this year where we performed poorly, very, very poor. Overrunning midfield, lack of ideas, and I need to criticise the manager a little bit, because I know after the he has come under a bit of scrutiny now. 6 losses down the line, but I was saying this even after the Fluminense game. His hands are tied behind his back. I understand that. However, if I'm not mistaken, one of Texter's reasoning for going for Anselmi, in terms of one of his first options was his tactical versatility. I'm not seeing it. I mean, he put Montoro behind the strikers against Flamengo when we saw Vijalba got his first game. He looked a very decent player in that game. Felt sorry for him. Other than that, I've not seen much tactical versatility. And during a time where we need to utilise the squad to the best of our means, and the most recent result can happen with all the conditions, but we just look so out of ideas half the time. And this goes back to the games we played back in Brazil, like when we played Fluminense, like as we've just lost to Flamengo. At the moment, it's just complete freestyle football. It looks unorganised chaos. Almost Renato Paiva-like at times, with less organisation. That's how dire things are looking on the pitch at the moment. And I do know that confidence issues has a big factor to play in that. but the confidence comes from, a lot of the time, the confidence comes from being able to execute the ideas in terms of your ability and what you're able to do and able to execute. And it doesn't look like the coach is really getting the best out of what we've got to utilise, albeit it's not much. Now, let me just make this very clear. Anselmi is not the problem. This is the only little bit of criticism you will hear about Anselmi from me on this podcast. 2 minutes at most. 2 minutes at most, because he come out after the game against Fluminense and he said, look, we can't sell any more players. That was 3 losses on the bounce at that point. The fans are starting to worry a little bit now. So is himself, I do presume. Had a couple injury problems as well. Yeah, it's not nice. Not Danilo, sorry, Alan going out is the reason Wallace Davi played the other day, or played last night, should I say, in the Libertadores. And but everyone who read into that, including myself, basically just sensed the message he was sending directly to, basically just straight to John Textor's face at this point. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. It's not ideal. He looked like he wanted to kill someone, at the end of that, during that presser, and I don't blame him. The fans share the frustration. He's come under a lot of scrutiny. Some of it, I think, really, really unfair. A lot of the initial comments I found that were defending Anselmi's position in terms of the results we were getting and the lack of dynamism in the team wasn't really being looked at as much as I thought it should have. There's never really a balance in this fan base regarding, the managerial stance. We win 4-0 against Cruzeiro. I'm seeing tweets like Ancelotti's useless, Davy J, of course that is, and it's just not the case. We move on to the game against Flamengo. That Fluminense game, our best chance of the game was Danilo hitting the post from a dead ball situation, a free kick, and he went off injured. And he had an absolute shocker against Flamengo, but he got subbed off before half-time. Very obvious he was not fit to play that game. That's gleamingly obvious. Luckily, if it wasn't for last night's game, I think the player I would have had the most critiques for would have definitely been Alex Telles, because this is why I just feel in some of the games, it's exactly why I feel uncomfortable with him having the captain's armband, because he doesn't have that stature, consistency, and not say consistency, but reliability is a better word in defensive areas. Now, he was definitely our best player, pick of the bunch last night. He held down that left zone, especially after they made some changes. Nacional made some changes in the second half, and I think particularly Jorge Rojas coming on that right hand side for Massimiliano Nunes, and that offered him to utilise pace out wide a little bit more, and that's what killed us. I think that's what we done well in the game last night. Now, do you know what? We'll move on to that, because there's so much shit. Neto, a guy I feel a little bit sorry for in a little bit, because there's too many goals. I said from his first game against Vasco last year in the cup, not only did he make the error for the goal and the free kick, absolute butterfingers, he just looked very insecure, just all over the place, not confident. He wasn't coming out to come and grab crosses of any conviction. I called it from day one. It's just shaky. It's just some bizarre goals he concedes, man. Honestly, just a lack of concentration, maybe athleticism. I don't know what it is about the guy. The winning goal against Flamengo. Now, look, I got to say as well, why in living fuck does Eric Pulgar have a free header at the back post from a corner? Why? And we can look at Neto all we want. Like, why would you parry that straight back to him? Like, the ball's right in front of you. You can parry it. If you're not going to catch it at the very least, which I think you should have, parry it outside the fucking box. Parry it over your goal anywhere, but it's almost like he had a bet on Flamengo to win that game. But the marking as well. And Barbosa, I think, nailed it after the game. Now, I don't want the kit man to take too much personal offence to what he said, because he came up with the comments saying we need to do more from the players to the owner to the kit man. It was hyperbole in just the kit man isn't the reason we lost the fucking game. Yeah, it's obvious hyperbole for just saying that the club's in disarray at the moment, and everyone who's involved in terms of the footballing stature, as well as helping us out from the top to bring in a little bit more calm into the team, a little bit more motivation as well. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. A lot more motivation. Yeah, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, that's my pick of the bunch for captaincy, because I was not impressed before last night. Not impressed with Alex Telles at all. I picked him out as the bad bunch against Grêmio on last week's podcast. Flamengo, poor, shocking, easy to beat, lightweight, no calm, no leadership, and that guy's got the armband, and he's got the most experience of them all, and that was people's main reasoning for why he should be the leader of the team. But sometimes sometimes you lead by example, you lead by performance as well. Sometimes you forget that, and he's not done that this season, man. I've been really disappointed. And then we all know he's not been the greatest defensively, but you need to conduct yourself with a bit of strength about you. Not physical strength, but just mental strength, just that lack of giving up spirit. And I don't want to say that he looks like he's give up easy, because he hasn't. But I've not seen that fighting spirit in him. The only player I've seen with that sort of spirit this year, actually there's two players, unsurprisingly Barbosa, someone who I think isn't getting the credit he deserves as well. And I was his biggest critic, if you watched the first episode of the podcast, Artur Cabral. I think he had a poor game. Not a poor game against Fluminense, but a quiet game, but by no fault of his own, because I see him trying to press and get on the ball. I see him, to be fair, Danilo did feed him through a fair few passes in that game, and his first touch was just not good enough. He was trying to play with his back to goal, and I thought he played that role like quite well, like excellently actually, against Cruzeiro, particularly against Grêmio. Thought it was our player of the match, that game. He didn't have the same conviction against Fluminense, but in all due respect, in his defence, when the ball came to his feet, no one was coming around him to offer that the 1-2s, the passing plays that we've seen in the first game against Cruzeiro. And I think it's little details like that, which is why Anselmi came out in his press conference afterwards and said there's a lack of utilisation to what we're doing on the training ground. How we're playing is not how we're meant to be playing on the training ground. So, and we don't have much of a sample size to base how he wants to play, other than the one game against Cruzeiro and how he played against Cruz Azul. And as we know, the style of play has to change from how he played at Cruz Azul due to the change, not just in personnel, but also in squad depth as well. So whether that's his lack of players that he has to utilise, which is why we're unable to play the style he desires, none of us really knows until we see it. And speaking of which, before we get into the Flamengo game, and then talking about last night's game, we have a couple of players coming through. First things first, who was just announced last night, as of actually, Eder Nilsson from Grêmio, who, look, we know what he is. He's not going to be here for the next 5 years. He's not going to be here for the next 2 or 3 years to offer us an advanced technical role in midfield. He's going to be here just to lay the groundwork and just come off the bench from time to time, maybe playing the cup game. We know exactly what he's going to be. But I think it's a really smart signing. Now, I'm not the one to just... I'm not the one to hype up every signing as if we've just signed fucking prime Laureus Mateus, because he's not. But I think in this moment where from top to bottom the media's getting in the players' heads as well, I think the manager's run out of ideas or even hasn't got enough ideas. Someone to offer that sort of calm and just reassurance away from Alex Telles and Martial, because as good experience we have in the squad, it's also a very inexperienced squad. Like Montoya in particular, I thought he was shocking last night, and it just shows. I think you just need someone to put your foot on the ball and just really give a bit of guidance in that aspect. So I think it'll be a very useful player to have on the training ground. Can maybe play start your game from time to time. He's still got a lot of legs on him. Technically limited, obviously. We know the player Ed Nilsson is. A few years ago, he was actually getting caught up to the cellar, so, but those years are way gone. We know exactly what he is. But I think that's a very smart, practical signing. As for Christian Medina, who I actually did a bit of research on, I don't know where he fits into the team in a sufficient manner, to be honest, because he's a very similar profile to Danilo. Now, Danilo is a bit more, I think Danilo's smoother on the ball, more two-footed, whatnot. But in terms of Danilo, he's similar in terms of he's that box crasher. Like, he takes the ball off the half spin and he likes to drive forward into the central zones. Whereas how we've been playing with Alan and Danilo before Danilo got injured, Alan was breaking up play. That's how we played against Cruzeiro. We've done really well, but obviously when we played against Fluminense, that being said, he went off injured against Fluminense 20 minutes in. And truth be told, when that happened, because I saw it was a midfield battle that game, it was a real physical game. It was not for the light-hearted, that game. As soon as Alan went off, I thought, that's it, game's done. Yeah, if I'm just being brutally honest, maybe a bit negative on my part, but as you could tell, it wasn't. We just lost that fight in midfield, man. And Bahera, man, I feel sorry for him being forced to play that deeper role, because as poor as we were against Flamengo, I thought he was one of the few players who could hold his head up, and that's when he played a more advanced role. He really was not that great last night, saying that neither were a lot of the players. But in terms of Flamengo, of course, we let that little fucking skinny, greasy, haircut little gambling addict, man. Of course he scores against us. Of course he does. We all saw it coming. I mean, Bastos didn't look too bad. Again, at the very least, it's not a nice position to be in as a Botafogo follower. It's really not. I can sit here and I can pick out individual players all I want, but we're not playing well as a collective. I know that comes down to the manager, but there's more, there's a lot more layers to it. But like I was saying about Medina, is if he slots in next to Danilo, I'm worried about defensive cover, unless he's really putting a lot of trust and faith in this central centre-back role, which now looks like after last night that Bastos will lock down and secure that position. Newton playing back in his, going back to his natural position, should I say. But yeah, do you know what? The thing is, in the Flamengo game, it has to be said, in the second half, the first half was almost unwatchable. It was poor from both teams, especially ourselves. We were just getting pinned back all the time. But in the first 20-25 minutes or so, in the second half, I thought we looked decent, to be fair. I thought we was attacking the wide areas really dangerously. We won the corner. Obviously, we scored from the corner. It's not like, but the thing, lack of clear-cut chances created, but we look good in flashes, and we had control of the ball in their half. So, first bit of promise, the only bit of promise really we've had, because last night, and let's just swoop into last night's game, because I know it's easy for me to sit here on my armchair and say the pace of the game was unwatchable. Let's be honest. If that game was played any slower, it would have been in reverse, and we know why. Playing at 4,000 altitude. It's, yeah, I mean, I've played football before in conditions where the humidity is high, or it's finding it hard to breathe, or lack of oxygen, but I've never played in those conditions, so I can only imagine how it would have felt. That being said, I'm not asking, when I see players who are they're playing the game at walking pace, I understand that, I do understand that, but again, man, fucking decision making at times, Now, Montoro had a shocker. But I want to be careful with what I say, because I don't like criticising players who look like they're willing to take a risk. Montoro looked like he was willing to take that risk, but his actions in the final third, he looked fantastic when he swooped past the defender at one point, and then, in my opinion, he should have. I'm sure those who watch the game are familiar with the action I'm talking about, the action in play. He should have. He could have either opened his body up, going with his left foot. That's one thing I noticed about Montoro. He doesn't use his left foot a lot. Even with the open goal he missed, if he just swizzles that across his left foot, it's a goal. He's always on his right foot. He's a bit too one-footed for my liking. But even on his right foot, he can bend that with the outside of his boot. But he decided to lay the ball off to Bahera. Really unlucky, obviously not to score. Mateus Martins, how the fuck he missed that? Like, come on, I would have scored that. Like, the keeper's planted out his line, and you can just curl it round him. You can go around him. Like, come on, man. And it was harder to miss in a point. And I've been very praiseful of you, Matthews Martins, since you've come back in the team, and you've shown that lightning pace off the bench, and you've been showing that willingness. But Flamengo, you were shocking. Like, Alex Telles called you out indirectly at half time, and again, I don't know what's happened to you. Like Mateus Martins, he's a weird player. He either looks electric at times or just clueless. Last night he looked clueless. He looks. I don't want to hear his inexperience as well. He's old enough. I think he's 22 years old now or something, and he's played at youth level. He's played a year with Botafogo's winning team. He played a fair good amount of minutes last season. You're more than equipped now with the maturity in terms of when to open your body up, when to make a run, when to calm the game down, when to take your man, and when to play a 1-2. And you still just look completely lost half the time. And it's frustrating because I can tell there's a player there with bags of ability on the ball in terms of his eye for goal as well. I don't see a bad player there. Again, is that a coaching thing? I don't know. It's like 4 different managers he's played under now. He just looks very inconsistent to me. That being said, I'm not suggesting we sell him. It's kind of hard to show consistency in this point of time in the team. It's just it's a common denominator with him. That's all I really wanted to bring up. And yeah, the game last night. But that being said, we could have won that game. We had 2 or 3 clear cut chances, and then 4 or 5 promising openings, which we just floundered. We blustered, honestly. That being said, they could have had a couple of goals as well. I do feel that we started off the first 10 minutes really shaky. Leo Linky, obviously now receiving a lot of heat. It's comical, it really is. I mean, at least with Leo Linky, I don't think he's a bad goalkeeper, Leo Linky. Do I feel confident in him starting? No. Do I feel confident in him starting over Neto? Fucking absolutely. Yeah, that guy's the criminal of the fan base at the moment, Neto. But I'll tell you right now, if we get... And everyone knows this, so I don't know why he's been like some sort of arse wiped into the fans, some sort of scapegoat, because you all know if we got that commanding goalkeeper in tomorrow, like I saw Andrew play against us at when we played Flamengo in the Carioca, and obviously he should be here, but Texter fucked about when he found out. Even if we had that sort of mould of goalkeeper, you do know it's not going to improve things, right? Until we get until we find this dynamic style of play. Like I said with Christian Medina, like I just don't know how it's going to work with Danilo unless he persists on... Again, this is not me saying he's a bad player. He's a very good player. I've not seen much of him at Estudiantes, but at Boca Juniors, we saw him there. He's a very well-renowned, well-sought-out midfielder in the South American football latitude. Like I get that. He's a very good player. I'm happy to have him. But I don't know how he's going to fit into the team, into this system exactly, unless Anselmi persists on a system change. And that doesn't mean a formation change, but just a system change to make sure we do have that man in midfield to just lock everything down. And whether you persist on using the sweeper role in the central centre-back position to do that. But then if that's the case, then we're going to need someone there. We're going to have to sign someone, because as reassuring as Bastos looks, is he fit enough to play that role? I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure he is. Unless he does persist on changing the formation. I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. I don't like how we're playing at the moment. I don't like the lack of versatility from the manager, although please take that lightly, because I do understand right now it's a very, very tough job. I'm very, very, very worried, disappointed, angry, upset with the lack of communication from the board. I know we're finally starting to get linked to players and get players through the door, like hallelujah. But why did it take this long? Where's the communication? What's happening behind the scenes? I think Pedro was absolutely spot on in his video yesterday. That the toxicity around the club in terms of the media, the uncertainty, it must be getting to the players. It must be. If I was a footballer in that environment, I'd be second guessing all my touches. It's just natural. Although I do disagree with him a little bit on one thing, because he did mention that we need a centre forward. Now I do say a little disagree, because I do agree we need a centre forward of that mould. But he picked out Artur Cabral. Personally, and like I said, I was the first to criticise Artur Cabral in episode 1. I think he's getting a lot of unfair slack. Like, he was not great against Fluminense, but I'm seeing him trying to push his players up in the press, and he's asking his players around him to play off him. And the team just seems so static and unsure what to do. It's one of those teams. Now, when I say the phrase, they don't look well coached, it doesn't mean that they're not well coached. It just means that sometimes it can be lack of confidence. But we don't seem to be a well-oiled team at the moment. And do you know what? To an extent, you could say that against Cruzeiro. Like, we just hit them on the break. Like, yeah, we look well organised, but we didn't look well-oiled. We just sort of hit them on the break, and individual qualities shined through. And Anselmi done really well to set us up for that game. And the game plan was absolutely perfect. That was not a poorly coached game. But we just look like a team that's not well-oiled. And in footballing aspects, it goes beyond Anselmi. It goes way beyond Anselmi. Yeah, I definitely agree with Pedro that the behind the scenes is definitely affecting the players. But what type of striker we need? If we're going to persist with how Anselmi wants to play, I mean, at Cruz Azul when he played a Sepulveda up front, he was anything he put his foot through the ball. Just 10 to goal. It was ridiculous. Does he fancy that sort of mould of player again? If I'm going to make it more understandable for the people listening to the podcast, I'd say more like a Tiquinho Suarez mould of player. I don't know. Does he fancy someone more like an Igor Jesus who's more natural to that role? Because I know Artur Cabral, in my opinion, has not done a bad job in the 3 games he's shown. Even in the games we lost, I don't think he's been that bad. But are we going to sign someone more suited to that mould? Because Cabral's not. I just don't know if he's suited to the way Anselmi wants to play. I don't really know if he's a Botafogo player. Full stop. To be honest, that's what I will say. So yeah, I do hear that we do need reinforcements up front. I thought Vijalba looked really good against Flamengo. I feel really sorry for him as well, man. I have to say, his touch, his willingness to get forward, to press, his energy. He looked really good. Looked really, really good. Almost remind me of Junior Santos, to be honest. But yeah, I felt really sorry for him. He came into an absolute mess. You couldn't help at all. I thought Barreira looked alright against Flamengo. Vijalba looked alright. Barbosa, as always, just exquisite. But Danilo poor, by no fault of his own, I understand. I don't know why I'm sitting here just going through individual performances, because we know as a team, like Barbosa said from the owner to the kit man, it just needs to give a little bit more. And yeah, it's been a really depressing half an hour, man, but serious conversations need to be had. I mean, I don't know what everyone's stances listening are on the manager, whether you think he will go. There's genuine question marks in the media whether he'll even be the coach for the second leg. How do you think we should go forward with a direction with Anselmi? Should it be with someone else before the running gets too tough? I don't know, man. It's looking like a long season. It's really looking like a long season. And so unnecessary, because if you look at the grand scheme of things, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, we've got players. We genuinely do have players to turn things around, and we have the squad, we have the resources, despite the fact that, based off what I read last week, there's a financial crisis. Like, apparently loads of non-playing staff have been laid off in order to balance the books. Makes more sense as to why Textor was so desperate to sell. It makes more sense, but it's still stupid. Let's not defend it. It's still stupid because a World Cup's coming up and European clubs have got more the money, all the power, and if Daniel has a good tournament, for example, you know, there's a lot of the European clubs will be stacking up to put the bids in to get the value higher in the summer. We should never be looking to sell Danilo. Let's just be honest about it. 35 million for Danilo and Montoro. That's just, as each day goes by and as results get worse, just thinking about that makes you sick. It really makes you sick. The good news is we have a perfect opportunity for a confidence booster on the weekend against Boavista. Just to, even if it's a 1-0 win, man, if we can just show signs that we can do something, you know, that'll be great. How the fuck we're leading the Carioca running with 3 games and 3 losses is beyond me. But let's just let's take it as it is and just do our best. Let's try and get a bit of confidence back into the boys. Let's play with some conviction and show we're able to play football. Maybe Edenilson might come in for that game. Maybe Christian Medina might come in for that game. I doubt it. I think that has a bit of... I think there's a bit more over the line to get that through. Obviously, he's going to come in from Argentina, unlike Edenilson. But we'll see. We'll see what business we can get over the line. Which reminds me, actually, we signed since last podcast. We signed João Hernandez as well, a left back who will rotate, I assume, for Alex Telles from time to time. He looks like a very two-footed, energetic player who looks willing to take his man on. He's got a very good cross in him. He's really well-renowned young talent in Colombia. Not going to sit here and pretend I know loads about him. This is just basic research. We'll see, but I did mention prior very clearly that we did need a left back who was capable of playing wing back. Something I do like about him as well, from what I've heard and seen, is that he's capable of tucking into a wide centre back role as well. Perfect, again, absolutely perfect for the way Anselmi wants to play. But if we can get a result against Boavista, man, then there's a bit of hope going home against Vitória. That being said, they're always a pain in the arse to play at home, aren't they? But we'll give it our best. I mean, yeah. Sorry for a bit of a depressing podcast today. I don't know what else you expected, though, really. It was just how it's going to be. It was just an emergency protocol. We had to have a serious conversation about the shit that's going down. What do you lot think about the managerial situation? Are we going to get any communication from the top coming down to the fans? It's just so much uncertainty. It's really frustrating. And all we can do whilst we wait on all this corporate stuff to get settled, I mean, the debt is really worrying. The financial crisis that's been reported by the press and the layoffs is really worrying. If we can finally get some results on the football pitch, it might be able to mask over it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, John Texter, I checked his Instagram today. He was all hyped up for the first leg against Nacional Perotti today. I know he's going to have a close eye on the team. He's in Rio at the moment, actually, so he's going to have a close eye on everything. I'm sure he's going to have his nose deep into everything that's going wrong. But yeah, there's not much to say other than that, really. We've touched on the manager, the new signings, our poor form, where we should go from here. It's only one where time will tell, man. So thank you very much for listening. If you've listened this far, you are a legend. Bit of a short one, only half an hour, I know. But I mean, this was the main reason why I were even looking to record a podcast today. But shit needs to get spoken about, so we can touch on these little things that have happened. So after the game against Boavista, we can have a conversation with Pedro after the weekend, and we can talk more in depth with a bit more opinions following the result there and where we go following the game against Vitória. So thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you next week, or maybe just in a few days, since this was a bit of a late pod. So regardless, catch you on the next one. Vamos Botafogo. See you later.